Welcome to WCAT. I'm Kiki Latimer, and I'm your host for the Catholic Bookworm. And I'm very excited to have with me today Robin Arthur. I've interviewed his brother several times, Ivan Arthur. Ivan's he's over in Spain and India at this time, and you are in Canada, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Robin has written a book called It's Everybody's World. We either live together or die together. And so we're very privileged to have him with us this morning. And how about, Robin, you start us off with a prayer?
Yeah, sure. Dear Lord, we come to you with humble hearts, seeking to share thoughts on the healing of our world, so that going forward, we may be able to seek the emergence of a just world that's egalitarian, compassionate, and globalized in its thinking. We seek to work towards a common responsibility for a common future. In Jesus' name we pray for your redemption. Amen.
Well, I just finished reading the book yesterday and I loved it. It was not what I was expecting. It has such a cheery title. It's Everybody's World, which sounds lovely. But you do address a lot of really grave matters and the situation of the world today. But I guess before we get to that, I should ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Kiki, I am a journalist by training and have been in this 30, 40 years. In fact, in 1995, I was the recipient of the Pan Asia Journalism Award, and I mean I have been passionate about this my work, and even today, at 74, I continue to write on issues that I think, and issues firstly that I'm familiar with. Essentially the political world, economics, and lately theology. In 2019, I did a book that was titled "Science and the God Illusion," which was a riposte to Richard Dawkins' book, The God Illusion. And then I did Experiencing God, and these were books that published by Unroot, Experiencing God, Thoughts and Testimonies, and the last one was Global Healing. So in a sense, this book, It's Everybody's World, is a sequel. It's a sequel to Global Healing. Yeah. Other than that, yes, my wife, Teresa, I live with her every year in Halifax. She just completed 50 years of marriage on the 20th of April.
Congratulations.
3 children in 3 different parts of the world, and 7 grandchildren.
Wow, how exciting. That's wonderful.
Once upon a time, some of my hobbies included music. Um, it no more, it no more is a hobby. I mean, I used to play the piano
Wow.
and things like that. So, yeah.
Well, you have a very gentle writing style, and considering the grave matters of which you write, I was just really impressed that you give the reader a real opportunity to listen to you.
To listen, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you come down too strongly, sometimes it doesn't help, especially in North America. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, everything can always be said in a kind of way. Yeah.
Right. I don't want to do too much a spoiler, but I do want to mention for those who go on to read the book that your opening story of the planet Shroud was very stunning and a real eye opener.
Yeah, there was a catch in the end.
Yeah, and so I don't
which
want to mention it.
tends to let the reader know that this is something that could happen.
But
Yeah.
you begin primarily with the concept or the reality of the rise of nationalism
Yeah.
throughout the world, especially in the major controlling countries of the world.
Yes. You can see it is sweeping across Central Europe and Central Asia. And that's on the one hand. And the thing with extreme nationalism is that in its progress, it slips into authoritarian rule. You know, I mean, in Hungary, you can almost see that um, the new prime minister is beginning to react like any type, titular head, or not so much a titular head, but as any dictator would. That's happening in Poland as well. In South Asia, you've got the Philippines, um, who basically having to contend with the dictator, and in India today as well. And you've been there. Likewise, what's happening in Europe is the fact that we're bringing in Muslims and Hindus and people of different color and different, faiths and cultures, and as I think it was the gentleman in Hungary who said, I mean, they come in from with different faiths, and they are going to influence our cultures. They're going to influence our religion. They're going to, and that's not what we want. Um, well, when you look at what was Hitler's motivation to go to war, it was basic. The motivation was hate and to eliminate, non-Aryan races from Germany,
And fear.
and to create fear and thus eliminate. We wanted to see the end of the Jews. I mean, that extreme hate causes this to happen.
You begin with the Ubuntu term phrase, I am because we are.
Yes,
Are
that
this,
is in fact a notion that many Africans hold, and the word that expresses that in one word, that word is Ubuntu. Most Africans know what Ubuntu means. What Ubuntu really means is I am because we are. And again, I will be talking about Ubuntu in in this um, in this 1 hour interview with you.
beautiful concept. So, I mean, we certainly here in the United States are seeing a rise of nationalism.
Clearly, with Donald Trump's having come there, gotten there in 2016, you saw the first thing he was trying to do was firstly build walls so that he, keeps, keeps the people he doesn't want outside its borders. One, the other was he was to ban Muslims of some 7 countries or whatever, so that he limited the number of Muslims coming. And it happened just about the time, when in Europe, starting out with Britain, Brexit basically led the way, um, saying, taking back control. And Donald Trump came in with that, with a resounding campaign line which said, "Make America Great Again," which is to suggest that increased immigration into the United States brought down America's greatness in many ways, uh, which was not true. So
You mentioned the statement, a civilized nation cannot turn to actions that dehumanize the marginalized, seeking refuge at their borders.
yes, I mean we know that, for example, when Syrian refugees were at Hungary's borders, he sprayed them. What's it called? when you spray mobs, you know, what's the word for spraying mobs, right?
yeah,
You tear gas. Sorry, I could see I could get
yeah.
the word. But yeah, he tear gassed them. At the U.S. borders, when those 5,000 caravans from Honduras and Guatemala came in, I mean, he did something. So I think something similar was done. I mean, and we know that mothers and children were separated at borders, and
Mm.
and so uh, a civilized nation shouldn't be hard on humanity. You're being hard. I mean, as Pope Paul, I think, not Pope Paul, I'm sorry, Pope Francis said recently, um, people who are taking those boats precariously to get here are not invaders. They're seeking welcome. They're seeking welcome. They're not invaders. And and I think Angela Merkel, uh, true to her faith, when she was challenged with something like 1 million refugees at the border, she opened the gates, and you know, uh,
It's very interesting.
civilized nations would deal with the issue that way. And in fact, forgetting his name now, the French UN gentleman had commented on the fact that just like forbidden fruits, if you close your borders, you're going to antagonize people and play into the hands of people smugglers. Whereas if you open your borders and provide an infrastructure of regulations for inviting people in, the chaos will end. So
You mentioned that Canada has done a good job of dealing with people coming in.
oh yes, oh yes. Um, uh, I think in a year ago, or was it 2 years ago, they upped their immigration numbers in a way that doubled the figures. Canada, for many years, was taking in about 250 newcomers in the independent category. But I think in 2022, uh, they brought in 500,000. They doubled it. And went on to say thereafter that we have an ambitious target of 1.5 million to be achieved in the next 3 years. Because apparently Canada sees immigration as a catalyst to the economy. It bumps up the economy. How? I mean, it's raising the tax levels, okay, the tax base rate. It's increasing economic consumption. It brings in skills, and especially in the region where we are, in what is called the Maritimes or the Atlantic region of Canada. Uh, there's high aging population.
Well,
Okay,
we have
so
that here as well. Yeah, I mean,
yes, so if we're going to be competitive in a competitive world, we need those skills. We need young people, and we need brilliant people. And in fact, when this happened in the 1990s, engineers, doctors, and software specialists, came in. That took the economies of Australia, Canada, the United States, and the UK um, to new heights never known before.
right.
So, little does the man on the street know, the man on the street in North America, know that immigration is a capitalist in the economy, capitalist in the economy.
Well, I mean, we have an aging population. We have people not having children, so we don't have young people sort of bringing up the rear, as
There
they
you
say.
go. Yes, yes. So there,
Yeah, I mean, we have employment signs everywhere you look, on every single business. There's, we are hiring, and there's nobody to fill positions here in the United States.
yeah,
Especially lower level jobs that our children don't want. They don't want
yes,
those positions, which is
yes,
interesting to me
yeah,
that, the same people that are looking for workers don't want immigration. Well, where do you think people are going to come from?
yeah, yeah,
We have to be receiving people from cultures that are still having children.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
So it's
After you asked me to set out a few questions, I put down, I compartmentalized all of these thoughts into different segments, and I sent that out to you, didn't I?
I did not receive that I know of.
The questions, the questions.
I did not, but
I,
it could be I don't have them right here in front of me, but
yeah.
feel free to ask them.
Okay. No. Perhaps you want me to say something about what the book is about. Is it a reference to growing nationalism that keeps other cultures and religions at safe distance? I mean, what is the book about? I thought I could just say a few words about that.
Please do.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kiki, none of us really won a 1939 world stage setting that unleashed a holocaust on the planet. Okay. In the last 10 years, we have seen anger festering in Europe over liberal immigration policies. And when streams of refugees headed to European shores during the bloody civil war in Syria, Europeans were polarized in their ideas about nationhood. Austria, Hungary, Denmark, and the Netherlands openly made it known that newcomers are not welcome, arguing that granting entry to these alien races practicing another faith would result in altering Europe's culture, custom, and tradition. What do you think led to World War II? It's a one word answer: hate. So, in tandem, it's also becoming increasingly evident that worldwide the primacy of democracy is waning. And almost in step with that, uh, several countries in Europe and at least a couple of nation states in Asia are slipping gradually into authoritarian governance. Now, that is unequivocally a consequence of hardcore nationalist revival. So, this book seeks to prick the ear and invite global communities to be vigilant and seek the peaceful advancement of humanity that globalization can bring about to open the gates to a common future, casting away the other troubles that nationalist ideologies trigger. Martin Luther King Jr. has reminded us that we must either live together as brothers or die together as fools. Yeah,
I did find some of your questions here while you were
you did.
speaking. That's good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Towards the end, where you start to talk about the concept of literacy, and you talk about literacy in terms of obviously the ability to read, but you also extend that to moral literacy.
Yes,
And so you talk about if, the question, if morality is made the cornerstone of the education process, we
yes,
should begin to see some changes in the world. The
yes,
whole concept of, there's literacy as far as just being able to read and write. That
yes,
is, and then of course we have now we have the, technological literacy, the ability to have the Zoom, and to turn on the internet. And then, intercultural literacy and moral literacy. So I mean,
yes,
huge topics that obviously are very necessary for the world to work well together at this
yeah.
point in
Now,
time.
on that question, I have a few comments. Um, you say if morality is made the cornerstone of the education process, we should begin to see the change we want to see in the world, right? And so let me expand on it. Um, In my mind, I see, I can point only to education as the key to creating an ideal world. Yes, Iraqi booksellers leave their books out in the open at night, and because they have a saying, our readers do not steal, and thieves cannot read. So what this says to me is, if we create readers, we also get rid of thieves. Now, communities, they also get rid of thieves. So we can create elite societies and peaceful communities, really by introducing moral conduct into the curricula of school education. A well-rounded education is key, I think, to the challenge of change. And those developed nations and those countries that seek social change through growing literacy will join the ranks of developed nations. I don't believe that you eradicate poverty by deploying Keynesian principles of GDP growth. I think you first have got to prepare the social climate in which the germ of development can germinate. So uh, I keep saying literacy and poverty, for example, are concomitant. Um, in and let me give you an illustration. In 1961, yeah, India's literacy rate hovered at around 40%, according to the Census of India report. At about the same time, economists estimated that the poverty rate in the 1960s also remained consistently at 41%. So you can see concomitants there. Then, almost 6 decades later, its literacy rate rose to about 77.7, down from 40 in 2018, and its poverty rate dropped from 41 to 21.9. I argue the fact that developing economies cannot rely on Keynesian theories of GDP growth if the social climate in which the seed of economic prosperity can germinate has not first been. You take countries, the rural regions in most countries, and you see a superstition basically running people's lives, you know. And then there are quaint customs and traditions, okay, that don't let them move forward and forward in life. I mean, today, I mean, we talk about women's literacy, for example, in the developing world. It ranges from 15 to 25%. So what equality are we talking with men? I mean, uh, today everything really works online, and if one wants to seek an appointment with the doctor, you got to get onto your phone and and just about everything you need to do in life requires you to get onto your computer and look up this and look up that. Nobody tells you you go here and there. You got to. So with low literacy levels, you're not going to be able to stand head to head with another literate person, and therefore you are sent back into the backwaters of life in poorer regions of other countries. So literacy, I keep saying, yeah, eliminates poverty by engaging societies in economic development. It boosts employment, scorns race-driven prejudice, and dispels ignorance. Okay. Likewise, moral literacy creates a society that abhors violence and the scourge of war, and creates the climate in which nations are transformed and driven to spawn and engender peaceable generations. Education fosters national morality. And so I say, if morality is made the cornerstone of the education process in developing countries, we should begin to see the change we want to see in the world. Yeah.
How do we dispel the fear? I mean, is it just a matter of education, the fear of other cultures?
The fear of other cultures, I think, again, would be non-existent once literacy rates are raised. For example, when I came to Canada, the only shock, culture shock, I faced was the fact that dinner is had at 5:30 in the evening. You know, I remember bringing in somebody to install our dishwasher as soon as, and this was 25 years ago. And he said, "I'll come dinner time." I said, 10:30, that would be too late. He says, "No." I said, "Dinner time." I said, "Yeah, you're talking about 10 o'clock." And he says, "No, I'm saying 5 o'clock." So that was culture shock, nothing else. I mean, the fact that I was, because firstly, you might say, having gone to Jesuit schools in India, traveled to most parts of the world, um, getting into North America did not in any way make me uncomfortable at all. Also because language was not an issue. You speak the language here that I spoke well in India, and so yeah, that I would think answers your question. Now, those that come here with not too familiar with the English language might require that. They are obviously literate. I mean, there are so many computer professionals coming out here that may not really be fluent with the English language, but they're technologically very competent. Yeah. But I suppose it's not fear, but a sense of discomfort of not being able to speak as equals. And that soon changed a couple of years.
What would you say about this is my biggest concern. I'll see if I can express it well and I can give you a story related to it. But it seems to me that multiculturalism, interculturation, education for everyone are Judeo-Christian concepts to begin
Mm-hmm.
with.
Mm-hmm.
For example, my husband had a good friend, an Islamic friend many years ago, Muhammad, and they were friends. They would go for walks together, and share aspects of their faith. My husband's Catholic. Um, and at one point, my husband asked Muhammad, "Do you enjoy the religious freedom that you have here in the United States?" And he said, "Yes, it's wonderful. I love it." And then my husband asked, if your culture were ever to take over the United States, that'd be the dominant culture, would you want that religious freedom to continue? And he said, absolutely not. We don't believe in religious freedom. So,
Yes.
so it seems to me, I mean, I love the concepts in your book, but I'm a Catholic. And it seems to me that these are under the foundation of everything
Mhm.
is a
Yeah.
Judeo-Christian concept. What
Yeah.
about people whose culture is, we don't believe in multiculturalism,
For those who don't believe in multiculturalism.
right? We
Yeah.
don't believe in education for women. Um, we don't believe in the concepts
That
that you bring.
not believing in not you know those that don't want women to be educated are from the backwaters of life in any country. I mean, women's but then this happened 150 years ago. I mean, in North America, uh, the woman was given the privilege to vote sometime in probably 1918. Yeah, so those views that put the women out of that took women out of the mainstream of life uh, was long ago. If it still happens, then oh well. Uh, Again, literacy changes all of it. Education changes all of that. It changes your own understanding of the social political structures that we have in North America. and it realizes that egalitarianism is important if we are to survive. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about this fact. I say that the political situation today is reminiscent of World War II. And do you want me to just expand on that?
Yes, please. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's important.
because I think what I said to you is, yeah, that it's reminiscent of 1939 when world powers clashed and unleashed World War II upon us. So, what would be my presumption to hold that view? I mean, is it really so scary? So, what I'd say to that is, um, it's it may seem like an exaggeration to say that these are scary times, almost reminiscent of the Holocaust of the first half of the century, when in 1939 a draconian world stage was all set for the exploration of evil. Now, we had the Axis alliance with tyrants in Italy, Japan, and Germany, who were pitched on one side against the principal allied powers, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Italy had invaded Ethiopia. Italy had invaded Ethiopia, yes, in October 1935. Japan had already taken Manchuria, and by 1937 or 38, it controlled large swaths. Germany had ramped up its pre-war expansion in 1938 with the annexation of Austria. Now, it's easy to see parallels in the way the world is set today, especially when you consider the new and strange alliances that state leaders have negotiated. The BBC has recently reported, only recently, that nuclear powered North Korea's weaponry is now actually being deployed to kill Ukrainians. Now, the report suggests that more immediate threat is now North Korea's ability to fuel existing wars and feed global instability. Then, of course, we have two wars raging on the ground: the US, UK, and European allies um, standing by Ukraine in its war with Russia, and the bloody war Israel is fighting in Gaza, with the US standing behind it, and Arab and Middle Eastern states watching outcomes closely.
Mhm.
Anything could happen. Um, it's just as well that the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, in a press release released last year in June, reported that of the total global inventory of an estimated 12,500 warheads in January 2023, about 9,500 of them were in military stockpiles for potential use. And then of those, an estimated 4,000 warheads are deployed with missiles and aircraft, and around 2,000 warheads, nearly all of them would belong to Russia or the United States, are kept in a state of high operational alert, fitted to missiles or held in air bases hosting nuclear bombs. It's so bad. The Stockholm Peace and Research Institute also affirmed in another press note that the world's total military expenditure shot up by 3.7% in real terms in 2022 to reach a new high of $2,240 billion. So there's this major expansion of nuclear weaponry taking place, and what, some 200 of those warheads are ready to shoot. Already, they're already fitted onto missiles and held at air bases housing nuclear bombers. So it's not an exaggeration, and that's what we need to build. You know,
Mhm.
I thought you might also um, want uh, you might just wonder, why do I say extreme nationalist ideology is currently penetrating world politics? and why is that bad for the world?
Hmm.
Shall
Well,
I?
yeah, please.
Yeah, okay. So, in my response to your first question, Kiki, I briefly touched on extreme nationalism gaining ground in Europe and the United States. Let me expand now on somewhat and on that, and then give you my tuppence, as it were, on why I think nationalist politics is bad for them. Anger over Europe's liberal immigration policy may have been brewing for a long time, but in early 2012, that festering anger among European right-wingers exploded with the bestial shooting on the island of Utoya in Norway by Anders Breivik
Hmm.
was terrific. In the Netherlands, ahead of the parliamentary elections in 2017, Geert Wilders proposed banning migrants from Islamic countries and the closing of mosques, Islamic schools, and such. In June 2018, Austria vowed to close 7 mosques and expel imams who it said are funded by foreign countries. Now, the immigration rules in Denmark are probably among Europe's toughest. There are also rumblings of dissent that could split the EU too. The pace by then was really set to roll back globalization. That was earlier evident in the Brexit call to take back control and the rallying cry or call in the United States to make America great again. So in the 2016 US election, there was talk of barring the entry of citizens from 7 Muslim countries and of plans to build a wall to stop Muslims from illegally crossing the US border to put America first. Next bill. So let me see. What did I say?
One of the things that you mentioned is that that I wanted to bring out, maybe this is a good place, is that the war sort of that we're fighting sort of globally here is not between religions, but between aggressively secular
Yes.
groups and versus religions.
Yes.
Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
I remember this is what, you know, this is what a Father Raymond D'Souza, who spoke at one of my interfaith conferences, had come up with. And let me just make a reference to that. Or I don't have it here, maybe. Hmm? Father Raymond, no. So he said it's not a question of whether we have room, but he's talked about the fact that in North America, you got an aggressive secularism, and really the issues are between the religious and the strongly secular. That's what we see in Canada, and he then of course I don't.
I mean, here as a Catholic, it's very interesting when, you mentioned Trump. We're
Yeah.
sort of stuck between the sort of nationalistic Republicans and the culture of death Democrats. So we have a tough time when we go to the polls to vote. Uh,
Yes.
you know, it's and anyone who's not in those two camps, if you vote for them, they're not going to get elected anyway. So we've got it. We always have a tough time of it as a Catholic going to the polls.
So what Father Raymond D'Souza was saying is, he says, first, religion has been a growing factor in the global public life in the late 20th and 21st centuries. Second, he says, religious liberty is the first and an essential public one. So any liberal democratic society has to make room for the religious in public life. Third, culture is at the heart, uh, or rather, religion is at the heart of culture, is at the heart of the religious. Yes, people are not going to leave their religion at the door and come in. So it's important to take into account religious identity and practice. And then lastly, the danger is this, he says. The growth of secular fundamentalism can be successful in marginalizing religious voices, but at the risk of radicalizing.
That was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to repeat that.
Yeah, it says it's important to take into account religious identity and practice, and that the danger is the growth of secular fundamentalism can be successful in marginalizing religious voices, but that would come at the risk of radicalizing.
Mhm.
And we've seen what religious radicalism has been doing,
Right.
starting with the Crusades.
Mhm.
You know,
You mentioned that
I,
there is a lot
yeah,
of Islamic and Christian dialogue at this time.
yes. In fact, Dr. Amir Hussain, who spoke at one of my conferences, talked about the fact that um, they have in the United States, or rather, let's put it this: the United Church has got together with Muslim centers and and mosques and such to come together and to agree on the commonalities between the two faiths, and and to accept the differences that lie between the two. So uh, I've got his notes somewhere here, which yeah, where is it? When we say how do we deal with religious diversity,
Mhm.
especially in North America? It may be said that interfaith dialogue is at the heart of the Christian message. Amr Hussain, a professor at the Department of Theological Studies at Loyola Marymount University, and he is in fact the gentleman who has written Backpage Blurb for my book.
Ah,
If you may want to look at it again. So he referred to the parable of the great banquet in Matthew 25, 31, 46 to make his point. What was that all about? What was the great banquet reading? This is when we hear it being said, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the nations are gathered before him, the king will say to those at his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, and thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger, and take you in? And the king will say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it for me, you did it. You in as much. Where am I? As you did it to one of the least of my brethren, you did it for me. He goes on to say that in order to gain a seat at the banquet, we must do likewise, that is, care for the stranger and be nice to our Muslim neighbors. Indeed, we can do this, he says, at the international or national level within our churches and mosques. The United Church in the United States, for example, has initiated interfaith discourses with mosques and Islamic centers with great success. You know, so we can bring people of diverse faiths into our fold, um, um, because they're not going to leave their faith at the door and come in, and yet you need them to grow your economies.
right.
Yeah. So there is a way of coming together as brothers, coming together as neighbors.
Mhm. I always say follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money. And, So it could very well be that economics will drive the interfaith literacy itself, because at some point we're simply going to realize we need people. Our cities need people.
Yes, they do. Especially when the percentage of aged uh, aging populations are speeding up,
Right.
Yes, and so you need people not to be competitive, and you need bright talent. On the other hand, you find them in different parts of the world. Canada is a great success story when it comes to its um, understanding of uh, benefits of immigration. Because so, one third of all of the doctors in this country, one third of all the pharmacists in this country, one third of the nurses in this country are newcomers.
So it's going well. It's doable.
Yes, and it's peaceable. Okay,
Right.
there are no issues, no riots, nothing of any kind. I mean, Canada is a model state that way. You know, everybody's nice to one another.
So there is hope.
Yes, there is hope.
There
Yeah.
is hope. You talk about the ability to find commonalities between cultures and faiths.
Yes, and through through the three conferences that had convened between 2011 and 16, that is what we saw. We came together to acknowledge differences and to recognize commonalities. And at the end of each of those conferences, I remember uh, there was so much of fervor, so much of passion in sharing thoughts about love and sharing thoughts about coming together.
So your final chapters are really dedicated to education.
Uh,
That this literacy, this moral literacy, cultural literacy.
yes, yes. I repeat your question again, Kiki.
Well, maybe you could tell us, how has Canada gone about like doing multicultural and moral literacy such that it's worked?
Yeah, firstly, Canada has been advised by demographers and political advisors, and so the infrastructure, in fact, today is being built in a way that it does not identify a ghetto somewhere, and and a class of burghers, uh, people in another. Um, it's being designed in such a way, townships are being designed in such a way that you have a temple, a mosque in the same place, and you've got a university right out there. So a mix of all. So in a sense, we don't create ghettos in any way, and we working on social inclusion in a big way. On the other hand, because if you're not going to include newcomers in your socio-economic projects, for example, um, society as a whole economically will be poorer. You know, so so in a sense, Canada does not make a deal about its multicultural population. It sees that as one nation, one people, you know, and no discrimination of any kind really in government affairs, in political affairs. It's very peaceable land. Yeah. We're at 11:35. Time flies.
Yeah, I know, it always goes fast.
Yeah.
So one of the things also that you mentioned, and I've always said this, irregular migration is a result of policies that prohibit proper immigration.
Yes,
So,
yes,
people say, well, they should come in legally, and I always say, well, they can't afford to come in legally. They're too poor to come in
yes,
legally. You've made the situation of coming in legally impossible.
yeah.
People don't want to come into a country illegally, but they have no other choice.
But they have no other choice, and that's
Right.
what I mean. I get his name now, Francis Crepo, a UN officer, had said, "Look, if you set up, you spend so much of money to secure your borders, and still you have, riots out there.
Right.
Why? Because you're playing into the hands of people smugglers. But if you had regular channels of information with regular a set of objectives and a set of rules, um,
We're
you
humane.
you open your borders and you create a vibrant economy.
Right.
Okay, but the moment you forbid fruit, uh, one is going to work against it. And I thought that was great advice. And because in the between the 16 in 2016 and 2021, Europe had a bad time. That was when some 400,000 people were killed in the Syrian war. And today's refugees, become refugees here, I think. Yeah. Um, now they say a record 1.3 million migrants applied for asylum in the 28 member states of the European Union in 2015, nearly double the previous high water mark in the year previous, according to First Pew research. And then at the end of 2022, 108.4 million people worldwide were forcibly displaced by a result of persecution, conflict, violence, and human rights violations. In other words, more than 1 in every 74 people on Earth today has been forced to flee.
So you mentioned right after that in the book that this usually, they're fleeing from something bad, and
Yeah.
that bad stems from a lack of literacy, a
Yes.
lack of education.
Yes.
So
The
if we
moment
want
you
to
have
reduce migrants,
yeah, the moment you have a literate state, the jobs are what you find in your country. You don't have to go elsewhere. And literacy changes that. And I say at another given point in time in this presentation that the West needs to aid in that program. You know, I suppose it can do this with the cooperation of the United Nations to get into countries. Okay, and because I have seen that happen in India in over 10 years with government and non-government organizations, uh, you know, taking education levels to a new high. Poverty levels fell. Uh, and so it's um, it's something the world needs to come together uh, for a peaceable world. Because violence and all of this really surfaces in low literacy level states.
well, there's so much in your book. It's a small book. It's a
Yeah,
doable for readership. It's not a tome. I highly recommend it. Because it's a very gentle book, as I said at the beginning, on really grave and important matters. Is there
yeah.
something that we haven't mentioned that you'd like to mention during this interview for people that are considering reading the book?
I think we've covered much. What I guess readers would need to know is that the last section, which is an addendum, carries some 9 or 10 stories of refugees who've seen the worst of life. Um, those stories are people uh, who were part of victims at Auschwitz, and so they've been there, standing before these places where they were being burned, and you know, we've seen, then of course we're talking about people fleeing Africa, the kind of troubles they've had. We've got stories of people who come to Canada, were treated badly and had to leave, and things like that. Stories that evoke a lot of pathos, and um, those stories, many have told me that uh, they thought those stories were very moving, and it kind of pushes you to read more and more about uh, where the world is going at this rate. Yeah.
I think the stories are very important because I think it's very easy to think of like migrants or immigrants, people at the border as a group, just sort of a blob of humanity that you can kind
Yeah.
of ignore. But when you get individual stories, you realize these are individual people with
People.
real families, real children,
Yeah.
real sorrow that they're fleeing, real desires for a better future for themselves and their children. And I think when we have individuals, it's far more easier to tap into our compassion
Oh
and
yes.
love. It's hard to love humanity. I can't love humanity, but I can love you and my
Yes.
friends.
Yeah.
So once, I always say, don't, when I come back, for instance, from Haiti, and I speak about, the people that I've met there, I don't speak about groups of people. I speak about one little boy or one little child that I met and that experience, because people can understand the one. It's hard
Yes.
to understand the many. So I thought the stories were really important that you include.
So you read the stories as well,
I did. I didn't read all of them, but I read quite
but
a
you read a
few.
few. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've met people that have those kind of stories, and
Mm.
it's quite, I mean, I've had a very blessed and easy life here in the United States. And so I haven't experienced those kinds of things, but I have met people who have, and it just amazes me that they've hung on to hope.
Yeah.
um, I had a seminarian at Holy Apostles College and Seminary. He was one of the Vietnamese boat people. And
Mm.
he piled in with, 30 other
Yeah.
people into a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
rickety boat.
In fact, there's one story of the Vietnamese boat people in that book,
I thought of
of the
him.
kind of trauma that they were
Yeah.
subject to in that 5 day journey.
Well, he got out with the group into the middle of the boat and the boat sunk.
Yeah.
And he was hanging onto a board. He was the only person who survived.
Yeah.
Everyone, his family, everyone around him died. And he was miraculously picked up by a passing ship, and brought to a refugee camp where he lived for the next 17 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what amazed me, and he's now a priest here in the United States, it's
I see.
amazing. But what amazed me was he said in the refugee camp that he woke up every morning and thanked God for 17 years.
Well, so
And
do
I
I.
was,
Yeah. I mean, I know I don't have stories like that, but no, I've got the morning. Thank
yeah,
the Lord.
yeah. So when you see
You
that,
know,
when you see that it's real people,
yeah,
the stories are so important.
yeah. Kiki, if you don't mind, I think got to invite the other gentleman in now. Uh,
Okay.
I told you I have a appointment at 12,
Yeah.
and so
Would you
uh,
like to? So the book is available on En route and Amazon.
it's available, in fact, on Barnes and Noble.
And Barnes and
and likewise, it's available on Poti, for example. Poti is an Indian publisher.
okay.
It's available on Android Books and Media. It's available on all of the Amazon branches across the world, Barnes and Noble as well, and I think most online networks across the world.
Thank you. And again, it's Everybody's World and Robin Arthur. And I thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiki. I mean, you've done. I mean, you know, in just in the way you present, and the way you know conduct the show, I was almost immediately addressed, and there was no anxieties of any kind. Yeah, so that
Would you
was
like to,
it was lovely spending this hour with you.
thank you. Would you like to end us with a quick prayer?
Yes, I could do that as well. Yeah. Um, Dear Lord, by your grace, we have had a wonderful discourse this morning. Thank you. We pray that these thoughts may filter down, illuminate, and contribute to the progress of mankind. In humility, Lord, we leave these thoughts at your feet. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you, Kiki.
It's been wonderful, and I give my love to your brother. And
to Ivan, surely I will. Surely I will.
Well, thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. You've been very kind. God bless.